Hi, my name is May. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I wanted to make a tutorial on how I do these drawings. Most times I start with a reference, but sometimes I don't because I either can't find one that I want to draw or I just don't feel like it. So for this drawing, I did not start off with the reference, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I typically do start with a reference. Pause with me real quick while I show you how I do my references when I am using one. All the photos I'm going to click on are good for varying different reasons like lighting, color, perspective. I typically go for very clear zoomed in pictures with good lighting or interesting lighting. Other things I'm looking for when I'm looking for a reference are uniqueness. That one had very interesting makeup. This one, I really like her hair and her makeup in that one too. Y'all remember how I was talking about lighting earlier? I typically go for really sunny pictures, but this is good too. Y'all see how the light was hitting her lips? That was perfect to me. Anyways, back to the sketch. I start my sketches the same as most people with that circle and the line going through it. Here's an example for all the absolute art newbies that don't know how the circle method works. After that, I kind of just do the face mapping, like the actual face mapping. When you're mapping out facial features, there's a general area for where each feature falls. But of course, everybody's face is different. The lines you see me drawing are a part of a formula that I use to build the face. Remember that circle method from earlier? So basically how it works is where the circle falls is about midway horizontally through a face. And then there's a vertical line that splits the face in half evenly. As far as where the chin goes, I kind of just freeball it. When I start out the facial mapping, I always start with the nose because it's sitting on that intersecting line between that circle and the line from earlier. And then I draw two lines that are on each side of the face that's about midway between the chin and the jaw. This gives me an idea of where the pupil's gonna be so I can then draw the eyes. And I kind of just gravitate towards circles for everything. There definitely is a more correct way to do this, but this is just how I do this. I feel like once you get used to where facial features generally sit by just kind of like staring at people, like literally just look at yourself in the mirror and you can see that your facial proportions kind of line up in certain ways. When you grasp the concept of that, that's when I feel like you can really stylize work, and that's how you start to build your own characters or build your own art style when it comes to drawing people. With that being said, when you look at my art style generally revolves around like those big eyes, the big lips, kind of like small chin. That's pretty much how I ended up developing my art style. I just drew faces over and over again, and I just figured out how face mapping works. And then you can tweak it from there on in because people's faces are not the same. Everyone's faces aren't the same. A tip that I struggled with and still have to remind myself to this day is when you first start drawing, sketch lightly. You see how when I started this sketch, I started very light sketches. It should have been lighter, honestly, because whenever you go back and you darken the lines, or if you need to erase something like this right here, you can still see the line. And to add to that, when you do erase, I highly recommend a kneaded eraser. I love kneaded erasers. They are great for erasing without doing too much erasing, if you know what I mean. I would have used one for this sketch, but I actually lost my kneaded eraser, and I had another one, but I accidentally left it out and it dried out. So, yeah. How I draw hair varies on the hair type. Looser curls are going to, of course, require different pencil strokes than it would be for tight coils. For this one, I wanted her to have more of like 4C hair, so the pencil strokes are going to be really small, like crips, I guess. Little swirls and stuff, like coils. This is an example of a previous work I did that had like 4C-ish hair that had the kinks and the swirls and the crips, apparently, that I was talking about. This is the part of the sketch where I take the time to darken the most important lines. When you go through and you darken lines, it kind of like accentuates the features of the drawing and it makes it pop. When I'm drawing eyebrows, it's kind of hard to explain how to draw each individual like pencil stroke, but I'll put a diagram on here so you can see what I'm doing, and then I would just look closely at the strokes that I'm making. The only tip that I really would suggest is to keep the pencil marks dark at the beginning of the stroke versus the end. Studying eye anatomy will help you a lot with how to do the natural curvature of eyelashes. Because when you're drawing eyelashes, the lash actually curves up from where the lid starts. After that, I just kind of darken again, make the lines darker in the most important spaces. Noses aren't my strong suit, so bear with me while I try to explain this. There is 2,000,000% a better way to explain how to do noses, but if you want to know how I do noses, this is how I draw them. I start off with 3 lines and then I kind of just build the nose up from there, and then I add the highlight and the shading later. Same thing with lips. Lips have the exact same process with the 3 circles, and then I build upon it later with the shading and the highlighting. This is the point that I start doing all the actual shading and adding the details as far as highlighting and where I want the shadows to fall on a face. I like to do this by actually drawing and blocking out those spots of where everything is going to go. So like in a second here, you're going to see me start drawing weird blobs all over her face, and that's where the highlight is going to go, and then I'm going to add shading to it afterwards. How I shade is pretty much just hatching. It's sometimes I do cross hatching, but for the most part, it's all just going to be a bunch of hatching in the same direction. The parts that I find to be most important to shade are going to be up under the chin, around and under the mouth, around the eyelids, and above the cheekbones, because the cheekbones have a specific point that I like to shade up under them. Those that do makeup are going to understand this a little bit more, because all the points that I'm telling you to add shading to are where you're typically going to add your bronzer. When I'm shading hair, I darken the areas that are closest to the face, but I leave blank spots open to give that afro-like illusion as the hair gets closer to the top of the head, if that makes any sense. This is the point where I'm going back and I'm darkening those spots again, because like I said before, everything you do the first time, you want to draw it lighter just in case you need to erase, but also because when you go back and you darken certain areas, it accentuates the whiteness in the paper, which in turn enhances the highlight of the drawing. And I'm gonna be real, this next part is where I messed up, because this is exactly why I was emphasizing so much on being careful with making such dark marks, because I accidentally darkened the corners of her mouth and then around her nose. Like, you see where I had paused just a second there? I'm gonna replay it. That right there. The disappointment. Yeah, and then after that I tried to fix it and it wasn't bad, but if I had a kneaded eraser, I think I could have fixed it better. But anyways, that's how I do my sketches. I'm just going to let the rest of this play so you can watch me finish it up if you want to. Thank you for tuning in to my first instructional YouTube video.